All right, everyone. Thank you guys for coming in with us today. This is your weekly weather briefing for Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019. We decided to go ahead and do this on a Tuesday just because of the holiday weekend here on Thursday. And that way we can go ahead and address what conditions are going to be like there on July 4th, where obviously we're going to have a lot of people and activities outside. So we'll go ahead and get into it. That's going to be our primary focus as we go through today. But for now, just looking at some of our current conditions, this is a loop of satellite showing basically from about 8 o'clock this morning until about 30 minutes ago. We can see what we're looking at here is we have a high pressure situated here in the northern Gulf of Mexico. That's really going to help kind of keep our storm chances a little bit lower for the next couple of days. But just given its location, you can even see that right there in the northern Gulf. It is just acting to basically pump in a lot of moisture into the area. And we're seeing that right now as we start to heat up in that late morning to early afternoon hours. We can start to see those towering cumulus clouds really starting to amp up over the area. We can even have some storm complexes out there in the Oklahoma, Arkansas region. We are expecting at least some storms kind of surrounding our forecast area here today. But you can see moving forward right now, we're only expecting about general thunderstorms for the majority of the country, only a marginal risk way up there in the northern plains. And really, this is going to be a repeat for a lot of the days going forward. So we're looking just at general thunderstorms, not expecting it severe, but we could have some isolated storms out there today. Looking at our actual chances here, we can see we're averaging around 20% for most of the area, falling in that slight chance category. So some very isolated storms we could see out there, very similar to what we've seen over the past several days around the area. As we get into our maximum temperatures, it looks like we are headed somewhere around the mid-90s for most of the area. It seems like, sorry, we got a note in there that we cannot hear. Please make sure you guys have your audios on. Anyway, so for our maximum temperatures here, we're at the mid-90s. As we get into our heat indexes, though, we see we are bumping up a little bit. We are getting several areas into the triple digits, some isolated areas pretty much north and west of that I-85 corridor, but for the south and east there, we're getting into the lower triple digits there, 103 for Macon, 101 for Athens, 104 Columbus. And that's going to be the case pretty much for today and tomorrow as well. I didn't actually want to include tomorrow, trying to keep this brief, but you can pretty much repeat Wednesday for today as well. The only difference is here in far northern Georgia, here Trenton, Dalton, Blairsville, we're looking at closer to a 30% chance of rain rather than here in these 20s. So moving forward to what's probably most important here is our Independence Day forecast. So everything here throughout for the next several slides is just going to be based solely for July 4th. So getting into it, what we're going to be looking at, very similar today, setup wise, we're going to have high pressure here throughout most of the eastern portions of the country. These high pressures, like I mentioned, is just going to be pumping in moisture for just several days, and it's going to come to a head here starting really on that July 4th, this Thursday. We start to see storm chances increasing. We are still going to be in that general thunderstorm outlook category there for Thursday. Not expecting any severe storms, but definitely some pop-up storms going to be possible. Looking at our rain chances, this is going for July 4th in the morning. This is, if you see up there, the upper left, going to be from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So this is early morning. We have a lot of parades going on. We have the Peachtree City Road Race going on there in the early morning time frame. And from here, we're only looking at slight chances really for far north and far northwest Georgia at this time. As we're starting getting into the afternoon, though, from 2 to 8 p.m., so when we have a lot of outdoor festivities going on, we see those chances start to increase. We're looking somewhere between 40 to 50% for most of the forecast area. And then going into the evening, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., so around the time when we're expecting fireworks to go off and people are commuting home after the fact, looking at rain chances again somewhere between about 30 to 40% for most of our area. So in general, easy way to think of it, there's a 1 in 3 chance that we're going to probably have some storm chances for your particular area at some point throughout the day. As far as rainfall totals go, we do have some very slight accumulations. We don't have any accumulations for today or tomorrow throughout most of our forecast area, outside some isolated 0.1 inch accumulations out for tomorrow. But for Thursday here, July 4th, we're looking at, we could see some isolated spots here. Widespread, we're looking somewhere between 0 to maybe a ½ inch. But we could have some locally higher amounts, especially in northeastern Georgia here. Blairsville, Gainesville, Athens, those areas are actually in a marginal chance for some significant rainfall there. It's usually only about a 5 to 10% chance. It's very low end, but we could have some stronger storms pop up in those regions. And if they stay concentrated over a particular area for a longer period of time, we could have some problems there. But it is a small chance, so we're not anticipating that, but it will be possible. So going into the maximum temperatures for July 4th here, again, very similar to what we've seen, actually slightly cooler than what we're expecting for today and tomorrow, looking at temperatures there from the kind of low to upper 90s. But what's going to be a little bit more impactful is going to be the heat index. So I'm going to walk you through the heat index, what we're expecting throughout most of the day, because as I mentioned, that high pressure is just pumping in moisture day after day, and it's really going to kind of come to a head here on this Thursday. So for 6 a.m. early morning, starting to get parades organized, Peachtree City road races going on. We're looking at heat indexes there in the lower 70s. As we kind of step throughout the day, 9 a.m., we're getting up in the upper 70s. And really from that 9 a.m. to noon corridor is when they're really going to be cranking up. By the time we get into noon, we could be hitting triple digits in the heat index for southeastern Georgia, southern and eastern Georgia, mid-90s for Atlanta and north of there. And then by the time we get into the afternoon, about 3 to 5 p.m. is when we're going to really see the max heat indices throughout the day. We're seeing several in the mid-triple digits for central Georgia, including places like Columbus, Eatonton, Dublin, and Macon. We will be nearing triple digits there in Atlanta, if not exceeding. And even some places like Athens and Rome do see it is possible to get above 100 degrees in some of those areas. And even Canton, Gainesville, Dalton, these are 99 degrees this far out. They very easily could hit triple digits too. So we're going to be watching this closely going forward. We don't have plans still 2 days out for any advisories yet, but it could be coming down the pipe, especially for those areas in central Georgia. And then by the time we get into about 8 p.m., so about the time we have fireworks starting to go off, we start dropping a little bit into the lower 90s, but it's going to be a really gradual drop-off as we get into the evening hours. As far as cloud cover goes, we're looking at mostly cloudy skies, mostly going to be just the cumulus clouds from the diurnal convection starting to go off, but with the increased moisture, we are anticipating increased cloud cover going into Thursday. Ceilings aren't going to be a problem, though. Everything should be well above 4,000 feet. And as far as, and I like to show this whenever it's July 4th, looking at our transport winds, what we're expecting around those times. The reason I like to show this is basically for smoke dispersion with the fireworks. Unfortunately, we're looking at pretty light winds coming out of the west and then coming out of the southwest as we get over into eastern Georgia. But it's going to be very light winds. We're looking at 3 to 5 miles an hour possible for most of these. So unfortunately, when we start having a lot of fireworks going off, there's not going to be a lot of dispersion of that smoke, unfortunately. So there's not much planning we can do around that, but I think it's at least interesting to know and plan for. All right, so then moving on, this is looking at the 7 days outside of noticing just Dalton here, which is actually only 5 days. But if you notice, this is the high temperature trends for 5 major points around our forecast area. And we see generally going from today into early next week, we actually have a decreasing trend as far as the temperatures go. So that's the positive note. We kind of, once we start getting into that Thursday, Friday time period, because we have an increase in moisture around the area, that's when we're really going to see our heat indices spike up. But by the time we get into about Saturday, Sunday, Monday, our temperatures start getting at least a little bit low enough to where we should help mitigate some of those risks. So rather than try to show you aerial graphics where everything's essentially going to look the same, I decided to break this up into more of a tabular format here, looking at what we're looking at as far as storms, temperatures, and heat indexes going into this week. So there we see Tuesday, Wednesday, we're mostly slight chance throughout the area, and then from the 4th or Thursday onward, we're looking at chance for thunderstorms every single day. We kind of have some slightly higher chances in some areas there Thursday and Friday. By Monday, we're limited to mostly 30% throughout the entire region. As far as high temperatures go, we're looking at mid to upper 90s to start the back half of this week. And then we slowly, like we saw on the previous slide, we slowly start to let up going into the low to mid 90s by the weekend and early next week. Our heat indices, though, are what's particular that we're going to have to watch out for. Here over the next 4 days, we're looking at upper 90s into the mid 100s. And unfortunately there, because the July 4th is kind of the highest day for those heat indices, and just given that we're expecting a lot of people to be outside on that day enjoying festivities, you did increase that for a little bit higher risk just because of exposure. So not only is it the highest day, but we're going to have a lot of people out. We're looking at possibly heat indices in the mid 100s, especially there in that central Georgia area, and also as well as eastern Georgia. So especially in those areas, you'll be on the lookout. Heat exhaustion is going to be probably going to be prevalent for anybody who's outside for a prolonged period of time who don't hydrate or don't get into the shade. So we'll have to be on the lookout for those for our first responders. Then as we start getting into Saturday, Sunday, Monday, though, we do start to lighten up a little bit. It's not going to be a huge increase. We're talking about drops in the heat indices and high temperatures of around 5 degrees compared to the next several days, but it'll at least be enough to help mitigate some of those heat risks going into the weekend. Okay, and then beyond that, once we start getting the 6 to 10 day outlook, we start to have above average precip expected for this time frame. But probably more importantly, greater than 50% chance for most of our region to have above average temperatures, and pretty much the same for the 8 to 14 day outlook, expecting mid normal to slightly above normal as far as precip goes, and then most likely going to be above normal on our precip over the next essentially 2 weeks. All right, so summarizing all this up, it's going to seem like Groundhog's Day. Every day is going to be pretty close to the day before it. There's really only minor chances from day to day, but breaking that down, Tuesday and Wednesday, we're expecting temps in the mid to upper 90s, only a slight chance for thunderstorms. As we get into July 4th and 5th, we start to see the chances for storms increasing as we get higher moisture into the area. Because of that, we combine those mid to upper 90 temperatures with that moisture. We're going to get our highest heat indices of the week there on the 4th and the 5th. And then beyond there, going into the weekend and the next week, our rain chances are going to remain about where they are there on the 4th and 5th, about the 30 to 40%, 50% in some isolated spots. But we will start to at least cool down a little bit by, on average, about 5 degrees area-wide. We'll get closer to normal temps around the weekend and beyond there. Okay, so for that, I have my eyes on chat here. If anybody has any questions, feel free to throw them in there. If you guys are on the conference call, it is, looks like it is #6 to unmute your line. Feel free to ask a question if you like.